Hello everybody, and welcome to ZookaMan Streaming, where I get you and your replays to be casted for MI entertainment and hopefully to help you improve a little bit as well. I am your host, ZookaMan, and we're going to go into a ZVT. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our players. In the top right-hand side of the map, I just completely spaced on the map. Oh, Frost, there we go. We have FEISTY, or more like FEISTY, going to be spawning as the red Terran player. And his opponent on the opposite side of the map, we see NickyBoy from the clan Merge, I believe is how that is pronounced. So, TVZ matchup. What are we seeing in TVZ matchup? Well, we are actually going to be seeing NickyBoy going for an extractor trick, which means that he's going to be getting that extra drone. And the Overlord is about popping up now too, so he's going to be doing that. But TVZ matchup, what we're seeing a lot. Well, we're seeing a lot of Muta, Bangling, Ling. I believe is a really popular strategy. Roach Hydra, definitely up there as well. But I think that as a Berserk player, Mutalisk, Bangling, Ling is just a really good composition, especially moving into late game Ultralisks, or even to that point, even adding in Vipers and. Well, maybe not Vipers, because Vipers are more up against really central units, and maybe it'll be a little bit better. I suppose. Actually, Blinding Cloud might be a lot better than that. But regardless, we're seeing NickyBoy going for an expansion. So yeah, Zergling, Muta, Bangling very popular in the matchup. I know Roach Hydra is sort of popular, but I would expect to see the Bangling, Zergling, at the very least opening, if not late game composition. Terran player, probably going to be going up onto an earlier expansion. Would love to see him going up into a Biomine play with some medevac support, and maybe even into late game Thors or something along those lines. Would be nice to see. Terran player is going to be going for a quick Reaper, and I guess not that quick. He's going to be going for that. Does have an orbital finishing up. Love to see him drop down his expansion fairly shortly here. I would assume that he's probably going to wait until that Reaper gets finished up. And then we'll see him do that. Back at home, NickyBoy does have his spawning pool coming up. No gas has been taken yet. So he's not going for a really crazy early metabolic boost. And my bet would be that it's going to come down a little bit here. Maybe even after this pool finishes up. But I hope he does start getting that gas fairly shortly if he's going for metabolic boost. Otherwise, I'd like to see him grab a third base and kind of drone out for a little bit. Terran player going to be going up on his natural expansion right now. He's going to be going for a reactor. Barracks factory has not started yet. Looks like that's what's going to be coming up next from FEISTY back home. Yep, we are missing the factory. So, a pretty standard little opening from Terran, being the Hellion opening with Reapers to scout out at the beginning portions of the map. Actually, a drone even going to be getting an SCV on the command center, and is going to get an extractor taken as well for extra additional scouting. Reaper is going to be denied access into this agile expansion. He is going to kind of stutter step it so that it survives, and looks like the extractor is going to be finishing up, which is a little bit odd. It's just a little bit odd in general. So everyone's probably seeing the factory switch with the barracks fairly shortly here, which means that Helium production will be on the way as well. Queens are both up at the natural and at the main base for our Zerg player now. A little bit behind the gas. I would like to see him take another gas, unless he's going for a quick third. And even then I would like to see him get his gas, because his metabolic boost is going to be super behind if he doesn't. And if he's going for a quick third, I'd love to see him... Oh, that's double gas coming up in the natural expansion. So, we are only seeing gas. I personally would have liked to see single gas would probably be a better idea than the double gas, just because it doesn't seem like he's wanting to go on to any really heavy tech. And the more you can put into your drones, the better. That's just kind of a given. Extractor is going to be cleared up in the back by these Marines. And third base is going to be taken for NickyBoy up at that third base. Meanwhile, Terran player is on one gas. Would love to see him grab his additional gas now that he has Starport and Factory Tech on the field. I'd love to see him add on a couple of Hellions into this army, get a little bit of aggression done. Maybe even like to see Widowmine production start in a little bit here. We're going to be seeing him transition a little bit into a little bit of Banshee pressure. Hellions are hitting over at this third base. NickyBoy a little bit in a bad position here. Has 10 more drones popping out. Doesn't really have many Zerglings on the map. He does have a couple of Queens, which should be able to force back the units to that from that third base. But if they run by and get into the main base, get into the natural, they can get a lot of damage done. I mean, look at all the juicy probes that are in these bases. 40 to 29 in favor of our Zerg player, who is now going to be going up into his double upgrades. Metabolic boost is 3/4 away done at this point. We do see an additional command center going to be added on from our Terran player for that third base, I would have to assume. While the Hellions are going to be moving in to kind of try to snipe this third base, which I kind of disagree with. I'd rather see him go for the creep deny, which is what he's going to be doing, and maybe even go into the natural expansion and try to get a little bit of drone damage done, because there's not really a lot of spine crawlers back home to really deal with that. Baneling Nest is going to be coming out from NickyBoy back home, which means that the Spire is probably going to come up once that third base starts getting saturated. Layer Tech is going to come up pretty late from our Zerg player, denying that a little bit for that third base. It does have his 1/1 plus 1, 1/1 on the way. Zerglings are now going to be spawning up on the map, but not in any really numbers to be able to take care of this. There's a Banshee added on here, but with the Queens, that should be perfectly fine in defending that. Even going to get his transfuse off on the Queen was a little bit damaged there. Back home at the Terran's base, we are taking gases 3 and 4. Isn't going to be going into any sort of factory tech, which is a little bit of a disadvantage here, in my opinion. I'd like to see him start getting AoE into this army, and I think that that would be a good way to do it. We're going to see a huge round of 20 drones coming up into this third base, and those might be able to go in and just do a little bit of damage. Meanwhile, back home, the Spire is coming up from NickyBoy, back in his main base. 1/1 just now about finishing out. We do have the third gases going to be coming up as well. Stim going to be coming out of the way for our Terran player at this point. A little bit late in that fact. I'd love to see him start taking his third base and kind of gearing up to do a little bit of economic damage behind this. We are going to be seeing the Hellions moving into the third base. Oh, the drones. The drones are not going to actually get pulled. Oh, no, the drones aren't going to get pulled. A lot of damage is going to get done here, but the Blings and Queens are going to be able to scrape them back before any really big damage is done. They did get a few probes, 7 probes in all, or drones, excuse me, 7 drones in all, which for all those Hellions isn't actually very good trade. 2-2 coming out from our Zerg player at this point, and now that he's kind of averted this threat, I'd love to see Spore Crawlers come down around his bases, maybe a Spine Crawler or 2, and start grabbing his 4th base. Because he's in a very comfortable position here, going into the 10-11 minute mark. So 4th base would be a good job. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see Zerglings come out and Banglings being researched, and even to that point, seeing some units hit the map. I think one of the big things that would be great for NickyBoy if he's not deciding to go up on an additional base is to try to do a little bit of damage to the SCV line of the 3rd of FEISTY, or likewise get a little bit of damage onto the natural and main base. +1/+1 just not going to be finishing up from our Terran player, along with the Stim as well. Combat Shields being researched along with this. Zerg player just not going to be putting up mutas on the map, while FEISTY is going to be moving out across the map with a couple medevacs and mostly Marines. He needs to be careful about how he plays this, however, because that Zerg has quite a few Banglings, and if those... Marines are going to be steaming forward, and they are going to be able to get a couple of creep turrets, are going to be able to get the Queen fairly easily, but he needs to be really careful here. The wind lines are a little bit far behind, but there's Banglings there, excuse me. 34 more Zerglings going to be added onto the map now. 2-2 coming out from our Zerg player, which is going to help him a lot going into this engagement. Terran player is just coming now on to 1-1. Doesn't really have a whole lot coming up behind this. So he's going to be in a little bit of a bad position going in here to the mid-game. Love to see him grab his 6th gas. And I like the fact that he's doing the pressure. He just needs to be really careful about how he does it and when he does that. Because of the fact that the Banglings are out on the field at this point. 4th base is coming out from our Zerg player at this point. We are seeing the Terran player go for a drop into the 4th base, or possibly even the main. Just now finishing up there for him. 2-2 coming out from our Terran player. We do have that Flyer Attack level 1 coming out. Zerglings are going to be coming up to the... they're going to the main base. Mules are going to be able to prepare for this, but the Marines are going to hit the ground Zerglings are going to get a pretty decent surround here. And suddenly the Terran player has to kind of drop off. He's going to lose one medevac. Might lose another one. NickyBoy going to be going up onto high tech at this point. Is going to be losing all of his drop there while the army pushes into the third, but not really able to do a whole lot of damage with that. Really not able to do damage at all. 12 additional drones going to be coming out to saturate that fourth base from our Zerg player. The third player, he kind of needs to fall back, get a little bit more AoE on the map, and try to find a good way to engage the army. Because there are quite a few banglings in this army, and there are quite a few mutas in the ear to kind of back that up. He needs to be careful, and he needs to get AoE on the field. Right now, I believe he only has... Oh, no, he has quite a few middle lines up, but he only had 3 there. In any case, he does have 3 burrowed, I believe. That's burrowed. Yeah, we do have 3 burrowed, and a couple more just kind of sitting in his army. Not really doing anything. He needs to be careful about how he engages this, because if the Windmines can get good shots off on the Zerglings, and primarily the Banglings, he'll be in a good position. But here comes an engagement here. Zerg player going to be moving forward. Doesn't have the... Oh, gosh! The Banglings, a couple of good Windmine connects are going to get a little bit of damage done there, and the Banglings are going to explode on the army a little bit as well. But there is quite a bit left in this army. He needs to be careful how he engages. He needs to split his army. Oh my gosh, a lot of Banglings are going to connect here! Ouch! That is painful to watch. Terran player going to be going for a drop play, it looks like, but that's totally going to get scouted and completely and utterly destroyed. Terran player taking a really aggressive positioning at this point, which I don't necessarily agree with the Ultralist Cavern coming up on the map. Adrenal Gland's going to be added on as well. It's a 3-3. All of that just is not going to be in his favor right now. Unless he can find some way to make a favorable engagement. He doesn't really have the Widowmine production. He definitely doesn't have the Siege Shake production, so he needs to kind of not keep pushing in here. Especially if he wants to keep pushing in here, he has to make sure that these units stay up. And especially the Widowmines, because those are going to be the important units going into this fight. 6 Ultra is going to be added on now. That is a lot of Ultras coming out from NickyBoy. He's going to be losing a few Overlords, but alas, the Terran player is going to get away. But FEISTY really does need to get his units together with additional 9 Ultralists coming out on the field. He's going to really need it, and he's going to need to focus down the... Marines are going to be utterly destroyed by the Banglings, and they are going to fall to their complete and utter death. Meanwhile, FEISTY is going to be continuing to try to fight here, but I don't necessarily agree with that. Because his opponent does have the superior composition and the superior upgrades at this point, he would be in much better favor just not being here. He's kind of putting himself really in danger of any sort of like Mutalist play or anything along those lines. Just are going to hit him really hard. And the Ultralists in general, because there's quite a few Marines in this army, I need to put something more into this to be able to really do a really effective job. Ultras are going to be engaging the Terran army here. We are going to be seeing him load up his units in the medevac and kind of going to retreat off of that. But I don't know. This engagement isn't really favorable for him. He's going to go for a drop play, but the Zerg player is already ready for him to do exactly that. Here comes the engagement coming up here from our players, and the Ultras are just going to shred apart everything in the front of the Terran army. Terran army needs to back up, collect his units together, and start kind of focusing on getting the macro game figured out, because he can't really drop much. There's too many Ultralists on the field. His opponent has Mules coming out as well to help deny those drops. So he's just really not in a good position here. Quite a few medevacs are going to be low there. He's going to drop off and pressure the base a little bit, but it's really not going to do a whole lot of damage, really. It might pick up a few drones, but that's not really going to make all the difference here. Meanwhile, the Terran player is going to be looking to continue up his bio play. He's going to be adding on Thors to the army, which I don't really agree with because of the large number of Ultras that are on the field. Excuse me. I'm a little bit tired, folks. Well, the Zerg is going to take in a favorable engagement here. 196 to 140 supply, and suddenly FEISTY's on the back end of this aggression here. Thor's army taking quite a bit of damage here. He's going to be splitting up his army a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be enough, guys, with another couple of Ultras coming out on the map. And Zerglings as well. I don't think there's much that FEISTY can do. He can engage this, but it's not really going to be able to do a whole lot of damage. I mean, the Ultra is just going to be so tanky on that 3-3. I believe they're on 5-3 because of the upgraded of its carapace, Wind Mines are going to be coming up and going to be blasting away at the Ultralisk, but once again, guys, I don't really think it's going to be enough. Even if he's able to hold off against this, he's going to be in a severe disadvantage with the Zerg player dropping down an additional 3 hatcheries and constantly continuing to stream out units across the map. He's still maxed up, so he's going to be in a bad position here. Up the creek with no paddle. Okay, Feisty gonna saying what he did wrong. Well. I'll have to answer that. Anyways, they're continuing to stream out more units, adding on additional bases. You know, at this point, Terran player is pretty much dead. Feisty's going to be losing a lot of these units here. A lot of buildings going down. We're going to be doing that. I'm kind of getting distracted by the text here, guys. I didn't know there was text because I don't actually preview my replays before I do that. So meanwhile, NickyBoy is just going over and pretty much taking out the rest of his opponent's bases. Isn't really going to have too much of trouble with that. I mean, he has the racist stuff. Ooh, wow, stay. Okay, so we only have a couple more, or about 15 more seconds. I thought there was going to be additional banter and stuff like that. But, yeah, we're having quite a bit of chat going on there. Feisty's going to be GGing out. So, as you guys could have saw that, you probably did, both players were kind of asking what they did wrong. So I'm going to help answer that, because I believe it was our Terran player who decided to upload this replay. So from Feisty's side of the field, from his standpoint, I liked that he was doing the pressure, but like I said, I think the pressure outstayed its welcome a lot, and when he lost that army to the Ultralisk switch, it was like, oh gosh, there's Ultras on the map, I can't really do anything against it, because he didn't really have the proper units. And right now, guys, it is kind of escaping me what unit of Terran is really good against Ultralisk. Please, if you guys know, let me know in the comments below, but I just, for the life of me, can't remember right now. Regardless, whatever X unit was, he needed to get X unit a little bit earlier in preparation for the Ultralisk tech switch. Because we see that a lot with this composition. We see the bailing, muted composition, and then you transition into Ultralisks later on in the game. Which, it's something that you kind of need to expect as a player anyways. As for the bailing engages, he did have the engagement going out, and when he initially started moving out, he did a little bit of damage, but at that point he didn't really have a whole lot of AoE in his army. He didn't have a whole lot of Wind Mines or tanks. So a suggestion to him would be to get more of those with those engagements, and also expect the Ultralisk tech switch. With that composition, you always want to expect the Ultralisk tech switch, and scouting while you're doing pressure like that, putting out scans, is very, very important. And he definitely had the minerals to drop down a few command centers just for the purpose of scanning. Now looking at the Zerg side of the things, he did go for a little bit greedier of play. He got his pull a little bit late. He started up his gas a little bit late. But one of the biggest problems I'll have against the Zerg player, and this is a problem that a lot of Zerg players have, so don't feel like it's just your fault, is the bank. I've talked about this on many of my casts before, and I probably continue to keep talking about the cast. But that's one of the big things any younger meaning less experienced, Zerg player has trouble with. Keeping the bank low, knowing when you need to get certain things in order to balance out your resources. And what I will suggest for NickyBoy is that anytime he gets above 1,000 minerals, drop down a macro hatch. Or, actually that's probably the best way to kind of get into it. And yeah, you see that he has one macro hatch over here. I believe he has an additional one by his main base. Yep, he has one over there. But yeah, I would suggest just putting down macro hatches when you when you have a lot of minerals that you aren't going to send into like a muta switch or something like that. Or in that circumstance, you want to just keep your money low. It's a big part of this game. It's a very, very important part of this game. So that being said, I think that's going to be it for the replay, guys. Thank you all for joining me, and we'll see you on the next cast.